Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name is James. Barely 7 days after my divorce was finalized, I got word that my ex-wife, Clara, had already remarried. She couldn't stop raving about her new husband, claiming he was everything she'd ever dreamed of, like she'd won the lottery with this guy. But when I finally saw this so-called perfect man she'd left me for, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Now, before you think I'm just bitter or spiteful, let me take you back to the start. To understand why this moment was so absurdly funny to me, you need the whole story. So, let's rewind to where it all began. It all started when I visited my uncle in a small town called Willow Creek. I make the trip every few months to check in on him, and he always seemed to appreciate the company. One weekend, I showed up, and there was Clara. She was part of my uncle's community gardening group. Not exactly a close friend of his, but friendly enough to drop by occasionally with fresh vegetables or to help with small chores. Honestly, the first time I met her, she barely registered. She was nice enough, sure, but there was no spark, no moment where I thought, wow, she's the one. We exchanged a polite hello, maybe a sentence or two, and that was it. If you'd asked me to describe her a week later, I'd have drawn a blank. A few months passed, and I found myself back at my uncle's place. Clara was there again, this time bustling around, helping him organize his garage. We ended up chatting a bit more that day, and I was surprised at how easy the conversation felt. She had a quick wit and a warm laugh that caught me off guard. Before I knew it, hours had slipped by. As she was leaving, my uncle, ever the meddler, gave me a sly grin and muttered, "Don't let her slip through your fingers, kid." I brushed it off with a chuckle, thinking he was just being his usual cheeky self. But then Clara turned back, pulled out her phone, and said, "Hey, let's keep in touch." We swapped numbers, and that was that. After she left, my uncle wouldn't let it go, teasing that I was already smitten. I laughed it off, but looking back, I can see that was the moment something shifted. I just didn't realize it at the time. We started texting, small things at first, like a funny meme or a quick comment about the day. Soon, those texts turned into long phone calls that stretched late into the night. Clara had a way of making even my dumb stories feel interesting, and I found myself looking forward to hearing her voice. Early on, I made sure she was single. My uncle, who knew her through the gardening group, casually mentioned she was unattached, which was all the reassurance I needed. After a few weeks of this, I mustered up the courage to ask her out. Her smile when she said yes is still burned into my memory. We planned a date for the next weekend, a simple dinner at a local spot in Willow Creek. And from there, things just clicked. Our dating years were effortless. We took our time, spending nearly 3 years together before even broaching the subject of marriage. I'd seen too many couples rush in and crash out, so I was determined to do it right. When we finally tied the knot, I genuinely believed we'd built something solid. But life has a way of throwing curveballs you never see coming. We thought taking the slow road would bulletproof our marriage, but it didn't. Not long after the wedding, I landed a job that was a game changer financially. The catch? It required a lot of travel, sometimes days, sometimes weeks at a time. I wasn't thrilled about being away, but I saw it as a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. The plan was simple: bank the money now, set us up for the future, then find something closer to home. It seemed logical to me, and I thought Clara was on board. At first, she was supportive, but as the trip stacked up, I could feel the air between us changing. Her warm goodbyes turned into clipped nods. Instead of asking when I'd be back, she'd sigh and say, "Another trip, huh?" I tried to explain that I wasn't choosing work over her. It was for us, for our future. But no matter how I framed it, she couldn't see it that way. To her, I was picking my job over our marriage. When I'd come home, drained from a long flight, she'd nitpick over small things that never used to matter. Then came the accusations. She started asking if I was seeing someone else on my trips, saying it made sense because I always seemed so tired. I was floored. I'd never even thought about cheating, but she was convinced there was another woman. I stayed calm, reassured her I was faithful, but it didn't help. The accusations only grew sharper, and home started feeling like a battlefield. The tension in our home was like a fog you couldn't see through. Every time I came back from a work trip, I braced myself for the next argument. Clara's accusations about me cheating didn't let up, no matter how many times I told her they were baseless. I thought if I stayed patient, she'd eventually see I was telling the truth, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Instead of easing up, she doubled down, and being home started to feel like walking into a trap. I'd find myself lingering at the airport or grabbing a coffee I didn't need, just to delay the inevitable clash waiting for me at her front door. The worst part? I wasn't happy being away either. Those hotel rooms and long flights wore me down, and I missed the days when Clara and I could just sit and laugh together. I started looking for jobs that would keep me in Willow Creek, but the few offers I found paid peanuts compared to what I was making. It felt like I was stuck choosing between financial stability and saving my marriage, and neither option seemed like a win. I kept hoping things would get better, that Clara would see I was trying, but the coldness between us only grew. Then something shifted. After one particularly long trip, I came home, and Clara greeted me with a small smile. For a split second, I thought maybe she was done fighting, that she'd realized we were both better off letting the petty stuff go. For a week or two, things felt lighter. She wasn't snapping at me as much, and I let myself believe we were turning a corner. But soon I noticed something else. Clara was gone a lot. She'd say she was running errands or visiting her friend, Sarah, and I didn't think much of it at first. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband accusing her of something without proof, especially after all her accusations about me. But deep down, a nagging feeling started to take root. One Saturday afternoon, Clara told me she was heading to Sarah's place, just like she'd done a dozen times before. I nodded, watched her grab her keys, and leave. A few hours later, I was flipping through a book in the living room when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was Sarah standing on my porch, asking if Clara was home. My stomach dropped. I stood there, frozen for a second, trying to process what she'd just said. I invited her in, my mind racing, and asked her to repeat herself. She said she hadn't seen Clara all day and thought she might be here. I pulled out my phone and called Clara, trying to keep my voice steady. When she picked up, I asked where she was. Without hesitating, she said, "Oh, I'm at Sarah's." I glanced at Sarah, who was sitting on our couch, looking confused. My heart was pounding, but I kept my tone calm. "Is Sarah there with you?" I asked. Clara didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, she's right here." That was it. She lied to me, smooth as anything, and I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak wash over me. I didn't call her out. I just said, "All right, see you later," and hung up. Sarah was still there, clearly unaware of the bomb she'd just dropped. I told her Clara must have gotten her wires crossed and sent her on her way. I sat there for hours, waiting for Clara to come home. My mind was spinning. Where was she? Who was she with? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. When Clara finally walked through the door that evening, I was ready. I didn't yell or lose my cool. I just asked, "Where were you today?" She stuck to her story, saying she'd been at Sarah's all afternoon, chatting and catching up. I looked her dead in the eye and told her Sarah had come by looking for her. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Panic, maybe, but she recovered fast. She said I must have misunderstood, that Sarah probably forgot they'd made plans. I wasn't buying it. I told her to call Sarah right then and there to clear it up. That's when she started squirming. She said it would be weird to drag Sarah into our conversation, that she didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. I pressed her, keeping my voice even, but she doubled down, refusing to make the call. Then, like a switch flipped, she turned the tables on me. She started yelling, saying I was the one who'd abandoned her first, always jitting off for work, leaving her alone. She said if I'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have to find ways to cope. Then came the kicker. She accused me of cheating again, saying my long trips gave me plenty of chances to mess around. I just sat there, stunned, as she tried to rewrite the story to make me the villain. Finally, I asked her point blank, "Are you seeing someone else?" She went quiet for a second, and I knew. She didn't even try to deny it for long. She admitted there was someone else, someone who actually cared about her, who made her feel valued in ways I never did. She went on and on about how amazing he was, how attentive, how perfect. It was like she was reading from a script, and every word felt like a knife. But the strangest thing? I didn't feel like fighting for her anymore. I was done. The moment Clara admitted she was seeing someone else, something inside me clicked off. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the way she said it, like she was proud, like this new guy was some kind of trophy I could never measure up to. She didn't apologize or try to explain. Instead, she leaned into it, telling me how this man was everything I wasn't, present, carrying a real partner. I sat there, listening to her rewrite our entire marriage, and I realized there was nothing left to salvage. I didn't beg or try to change her mind. The next morning, I called a lawyer and started the divorce process. Deciding to end it was both the hardest and easiest choice I'd ever made. Hard because I'd spent years believing we were building something real, that we'd grow old together in Willow Creek. Easy because, deep down, I knew staying would only mean more lies, more fights, more nights wondering what else she was hiding. When someone shows you they've checked out, you don't stick around hoping they'll change their mind. You walk away. So I did. Divorce, though, isn't like flipping a switch. It's a slow, grinding machine that chews up your time, energy, and patience. There were endless meetings with lawyers, piles of paperwork, and court dates that dragged on like a bad movie. Every little detail, who gets the furniture, who pays what bill, turned into a negotiation. I tried to keep my head down and stay civil, but Clara didn't make it easy. Whenever we had a talk, usually about splitting assets or signing forms, she'd slip in little digs. "You were never enough for me," she'd say with a smirk. Or, "I'm so glad I found someone who actually knows how to love." Each jab stung, but I refused to let her see it. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. While the divorce crawled along, Clara didn't waste any time moving on. She packed up her things and moved in with her new guy, someone she called her soulmate in one of our last conversations. I didn't know much about him, and honestly, I didn't want to. All I knew was that she was gone, and our house felt emptier than ever. The silence was deafening at first, but after a while, I started to appreciate it. No more walking on eggshells, no more bracing for the next argument. Just me, figuring out how to start over. The process took almost a year, and by the time the divorce was finalized, I felt like I'd aged a decade. Clara got a few things in the settlement, some savings, a car, but I kept the house and most of what we'd built together. It wasn't about winning. It was about holding on to what mattered to me. When the judge signed off on the papers, I walked out of the courthouse with a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I was free, but freedom came with a weight I hadn't expected. Exactly 1 week later, I got a call from a mutual friend who dropped the news. Clara had already remarried. I blinked, processing it. "Already?" I asked, half laughing in disbelief. I figured she'd at least take a breath between relationships. But nope, she'd jumped straight into a new marriage with her so-called perfect man. I wasn't mad, though. If anything, I felt a twinge of pity. I muttered a quick, "good luck to them," and moved on with my day. I had no intention of seeing her again. Life, however, had other plans. About a month later, I was out running errands in downtown Willow Creek when I spotted them, Clara and her new husband, across the street. She saw me first, and her face went pale, like she'd seen a ghost. I glanced at the guy next to her, and I couldn't help it. I started laughing. All those months, she'd bragged about how this guy was better than me in every way. Richer, stronger, more successful. And here he was, a scrawny, disheveled-looking dude who seemed like he'd just rolled out of bed. He didn't look like a soulmate or a step up. He looked like someone who'd lose a fight with a strong breeze. Clara grabbed his arm and yanked him away, practically dragging him down the sidewalk. I called out, "Have a nice day," and kept walking, still chuckling to myself. It wasn't about being petty or cruel. It was the absurdity of it all. This was the guy she'd thrown away our marriage for. This was her big upgrade. In that moment, I realized I'd dodged a massive bullet. I didn't want her back, not even a little. I felt lighter than I had in years, like a weight I'd been carrying had finally lifted. After that chance encounter with Clara and her new husband in Willow Creek, I felt a shift. It wasn't just about laughing at the absurdity of her perfect man. It was the realization that I was truly done. The door to that chapter of my life had slammed shut, and for the first time, I was okay with it. I didn't need to prove anything to her or anyone else. I had my freedom, my peace, and a wide-open future. But starting over isn't as simple as it sounds, and I knew I had some work to do before I could move forward. I made a conscious decision not to jump into another relationship right away. After everything I'd been through with Clara, the last thing I wanted was to drag old baggage into something new. I needed time to heal, to figure out who I was without the weight of a failing marriage on my shoulders. So I focused on the basics, keeping the house in order, staying on top of my job, and rediscovering the things that used to make me happy. I started hiking again, something I'd loved before life got so complicated. The trails around Willow Creek were quiet, and those long walks gave me space to think, or sometimes to not think at all. Funny enough, not long after the divorce, I started noticing one of Clara's old friends, Lena, being a little friendlier than usual. Lena had always been around during our marriage, part of the same gardening group as Clara and my uncle. She'd pop up at community events or drop by my uncle's place with a batch of cookies. After the divorce, though, she started texting me out of the blue, small things like asking how I was holding up or sharing a funny story about her dog. When we'd run into each other at the market or a local cafe, she'd linger, chatting longer than necessary. I'll admit, it felt nice to have someone show genuine interest, but I was cautious. My heart had taken enough of a beating, and I wasn't ready to risk it again. Lena's kindness didn't go unnoticed, but I kept things friendly and nothing more. I've been burned once, and the idea of diving into anything, even something as innocent as a coffee date, felt like tempting fate. Still, her messages and little gestures planted a seed. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for new connections in my life, but it would have to be on my terms and in my own time. Work, thankfully, started to stabilize. I'd managed to negotiate with my boss for fewer out-of-state trips, trading some of my overtime pay for a schedule that kept me closer to home. It wasn't perfect, and the paycheck took a hit, but being able to sleep in my own bed most nights was worth it. I also started reconnecting with old friends I'd lost touch with during the chaos of my marriage. We'd grab beers at the local pub or spend a Saturday fishing by the lake. Those moments reminded me that life didn't have to be a constant battle. There were still people who had my back, still things worth smiling about. Looking back, the divorce taught me some hard truths I'll never forget. The first is that you can't fix someone who's determined to see you as the problem. I spent years trying to reason with Clara, explaining myself, thinking if I just found the right words, she'd understand. But when someone's already made up their mind that you're the bad guy, no amount of patience or logic will change it. They'll twist your actions, your intentions, even your love into something ugly. And that's not on you, it's on them. Another lesson hit even deeper. You can't lose what was never truly yours. For a long time, I thought losing Clara meant I'd failed, that I'd let something precious slip away. But the truth is, she'd checked out of our marriage long before I called the lawyer. She was there in body, but her heart had left the building. Realizing that didn't make the pain disappear, but it helped me stop blaming myself. I hadn't lost her. She'd chosen to walk away. As I settled into this new version of my life, I started to feel a spark of hope. It wasn't loud or flashy, just a quiet sense that things could be good again. I wasn't rushing to fill the empty spaces Clara left behind, but I was open to whatever came next. Maybe that meant a new relationship someday. Maybe it meant finding joy in my own company. Either way, I was done letting the past define me. Willow Creek, with its familiar streets and friendly faces, felt like a fresh start, and I was ready to see where it would lead. As the months rolled on in Willow Creek, I found a rhythm that felt like mine. The house, once heavy with the ghosts of arguments, started to feel like a home again. I'd fixed up the porch, planted a small garden out back, and even adopted a scruffy mutt named Max from the local shelter. Max had a knack for dragging me out of my head. His relentless enthusiasm for chasing squirrels or napping in sunspots was contagious. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something for myself. Lena's presence in my life grew steadier, though I kept my guard up. Her texts turned into regular coffee meetups, always casual, always easy. She'd tell stories about her latest gardening mishaps or her part-time job at the library, and I'd find myself laughing more than I had in ages. One afternoon, as we sat outside a cafe, she looked at me and said, "You seem different, James. Lighter." I didn't know how to respond, but she was right. The weight of Clara's betrayal, the divorce, all of it was finally starting to fade. I wasn't ready to call whatever was happening with Lena anything more than friendship, but I couldn't deny it felt good to have someone in my corner. Then, life threw me another curveball. I was at the hardware store one day, picking up paint for the guest room, when I overheard two locals gossiping by the checkout. They were talking about Clara. Apparently, her new marriage wasn't the fairy tale she'd made it out to be. Word around town was that her perfect husband was unemployed, living off her savings, and had a temper that was starting to show. I didn't stick around to hear more, but the news didn't surprise me. The guy I'd seen her with didn't exactly scream stability. Part of me felt a flicker of vindication, but mostly, I just felt sorry for her. She made her choices, and now she was living with them. That night, I sat on my porch with Max sprawled at my feet, thinking about how far I'd come. The divorce had felt like the end of the world at the time, but it had forced me to face some truths about myself. I'd spent too long trying to please someone who didn't want to be pleased, too long believing love meant enduring pain. Now I knew better. Love, real love, doesn't demand you shrink yourself or beg for scraps. It's mutual, it's kind, and it's worth waiting for. A few weeks later, my uncle threw a barbecue at his place, the kind of loud, messy gathering Willow Creek was known for. Lena was there, helping serve lemonade and teasing me about my terrible grilling skills. As the sun set and the crowd thinned, we ended up sitting by the fire pit, talking about nothing and everything. She asked me what I wanted out of life now, and I surprised myself with how easily the answer came. "I want to keep things simple," I said. "Good people, good days, maybe a few more hikes with Max. And if something real comes along, I'm open to it. But I'm not chasing anything anymore." She smiled, her eyes catching the firelight. "That sounds like a pretty good plan." We didn't say much after that, just sat there listening to the crickets and the crackle of the flames. It wasn't a grand moment, no Hollywood romance scene, but it felt right. For the first time, I could imagine a future that wasn't defined by what I'd lost. Looking back, I don't regret a single step of this messy journey. Clara's betrayal broke me open, but it also gave me a chance to rebuild stronger. I learned that peace is worth more than pretending, that freedom beats forcing something that hurts. And maybe most importantly, I learned that you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. You just have to take the next step, then the next, and trust you'll end up where you're meant to be. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through what I did, it's this: don't waste your energy trying to fix someone who's determined to break you. Let them go. Focus on what's in front of you. The people who show up, the moments that make you feel alive. That's where the good stuff is. As for me, I'm still here in Willow Creek with Max, a half-decent garden, and a life that's mine. Lena's still around too, and while I'm not rushing to label anything, I'm grateful for her. The future's wide open, and for once, I'm excited to see where it leads. So what do you think? Ever been through a storm like this and come out stronger? I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them below, and let's talk.